Welcome to Conversations That Matter.
I'm Brittany Butler.
I'm Sky McFarland, filling in for Michelle, which is impossible, but I'm here.
We have some great guests with us again today, and so we're going to ask them to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Ruth Taylor Reed. I'm a program manager for ETSU's Office of Professional Development, which allows me to coordinate events that are familiar to some, but also have a lot to do with National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is October.
And I'm Amani Brice, and I'm a sexual assault advocate with Frontier Health.
Wow. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Knoxville. Well, I grew up here, and then I moved to Knoxville in 4th grade with my mom. So I went to high school there, and I came back here for college. I went to ETSU.
Awesome.
Great.
Very cool.
Well, that explains why you never missed those UT games.
Yeah. Well, I have season tickets. My sister works for the football team, Ruth.
I don't think I know anybody else that has as much orange stuff as you.
Rachel, because she gave me a bunch of stuff.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the work you do with Frontier Health.
So I am the sexual assault advocate, and we serve Washington County, Johnson City, Bristol, Tennessee, Greene County, and we also serve Johnson County. So I'm the first response at the hospital, or we have new on-site rooms with Branch House, and I stay with the victim the duration of their sexual assault kit, follow-up interviews, watch the kids while they have to interview with the DA's office, child prep, pretty much until they stop talking to me. I talk to them for as long as they want, because kits take a while to get back, so I'm just trying to stay in constant contact with them during this whole process, set them up for resources like therapy. And we also have 2 domestic violence shelters that if the assault happened in their home, they can go there and make sure they're still safe till they're ready to go back home.
And so when you were at ETSU, what was the major or a program, or was it this that led you into this work? Was it related or not?
No, it was early childhood development. Okay. So it's completely different, but I always like working with kids, and unfortunately I have a lot of kid sexual assault cases that I have to deal with. So really when I deal with children, I feel like that's where my little education hat comes on, and I just play with them during that, make them feel as comfortable as they can. I'm also over the angel tree for the kids, so I always try to get kids for our program. So yeah, I did nothing that relates to this, but I feel like it does in a way, just like being a good person and dealing with people in the most traumatic points of their life, typically.
You must have to do a lot of taking care of yourself along the way as well.
Yeah. We have a therapist at our office, and I always go and I need to have my little therapy session. She's like, okay, I have 10 minutes. And
That's
so
important.
I just vent everything to her, and she's like, you're feeling developed. And we're working on boundaries, because I'm really bad at if a client calls me or their kid will need something. Like today I was on my way here and I had a client, and she was like, what about my groceries? And I was like, I'll get them. And I'm like, when will I get them? But I was like, I can get them for you tomorrow. So I'm really working on boundaries, but I always tell them, if I don't answer, I promise I will get back to you.
Yeah. Well, what have you got coming up? What do we need to know about?
Well, we have a couple of things coming up. I'll talk about the East Tennessee Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Summit. It's happening Friday, October 27th. It's at the Brinkley Center, which was the Millennium Center. And we have an impressive lineup of presenters, and they're trauma-informed presenters. And I think that that's very important, because we don't want to be part of re-traumatizing those who have survived, and some are thriving through that part of their journey. I have found as a seminarian, sometimes we utilize what is most familiar to us sometimes to re-traumatize victims. And State Representative Rebecca Alexander is coming actually to introduce Dr. McCorkle, who is provost at ETSU, but she's also, a lot of people don't know, she's a former district attorney in Florida that would prosecute domestic violence and sexual assault cases. I've seen her do a presentation before, and she's very dynamic and very well informed and trauma informed. We have the sexual assault victim advocate from the U.S. Department of Defense, Sergeant Major Cindy Humphrey, is coming to talk about what it's like in military as far as the response goes. We have Assistant District Attorney of Washington County and Sullivan County, Abby Wallace, and totally went blank. Kaylin Render. It's an amazing lineup of speakers. We also have Bristol, Tennessee's Police Chief, Matt Austin, who will be presenting and walking us through his journey in law enforcement from being on the road to being an investigator and now these days being a chief. And it was amazing to hear his firsthand stories about, here's what I did wrong when I responded earlier to some of these cases. Here's how I could have done this correctly. And here is the training to do just that.
We have an event tonight at Cranberries. We're inviting a big chunk of them are clients who we've been in shelter or and we have two other ladies coming to just tell their story after fleeing their abuser for domestic violence awareness night. It's at Cranberries tonight, and that's what they're going to be sharing their story a little bit, just raising awareness about sexual or domestic violence.
Now, Ruth, I know you've been on here before, but I know we probably talked about this last time, but maybe just to inform people again, what is trauma-informed care? Trauma-informed
care, it's funny, my dissertation is entitled, First, Do No More Harm, an Ethical Response in Spiritual Care to Trauma Survivors. Because I think that that's important, especially where we live in this region. It's important to recognize that what's familiar to us, and a lot of times that can be scriptural texts, a lot of times that can be cliches that we hear in East Tennessee folklore. We have to be careful not to re-traumatize a victim, to sit with them, to be still. Sometimes the most holy thing we can do is to listen. It's to listen. Trauma-informed care and response is avoiding the re-traumatization of someone who has been traumatized in any way, but today we're just focusing on domestic violence and sexual assault.
Mm-hmm. And I know you were trying to reach out to some of the religious leaders and things in this area. Is that still an ongoing process?
It is an ongoing adventure. It's an adventure. When I first started this conference years ago, I met with apathy. I met with a collective turning of heads. And that became discouraging for a long, long time. And probably that's what led me to go to seminary to begin with. It was to be able to respond as part of a faith community that prioritizes compassion and education and being trauma-informed. And I'm amazed sometimes when I go for an immersive experience in school. I have to travel to Minnesota to do that. Or in my Zoom classes, I am pleasantly surprised by members of the faith community who do encourage these difficult conversations, because quite often theology doesn't have a language for this. We have to step back and think, this is not the time to say all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, is it? It is not. So we have to step back and talk about that. And there is a new faith cohort here in the region I'm excited to be part of. Conversations are beginning. Progress is being made. Baby steps, but progress. And Frontier Health has grown the sexual assault response exponentially since I became trained in 2014. They provide that trauma-informed care and a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Is that where we had someone on before talking about the SANE nurses?
That was
Yes.
Tina and Ruth.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
Yes.
Is that under Frontier Health, or is that broader? Training
It's
you can
broader.
get?
The
Okay.
SANE nurses are, I think, contract through Branch House. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I know for Branch House, I think they do up to 16. I believe that could be wrong, but if it's under 16, they have to go to like the hospital, and there's like SANE A and SANE P trained for pediatric
okay.
clients. Yeah, and
What's
we
that
respond to those
acronym
too.
again? I can't.
SANE is Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner.
Okay.
And when this journey began in 2014, we had one SANE nurse in this entire region, one. And through the Help Sarah grant at ETSU, more than 100 became trained. Not all of them are currently active, but we do have a constant response through the Branch House.
Yeah, they always have. And so we have 5 of us that respond after hours. So from every day, every time, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving morning, doesn't matter. We're always going to respond and then go to the Branch House room. Or there's also an on-site room new in JCNC Hospital that's much more trauma-informed. It's not like, it's just like a little room, has a little couch, dim lighting, very nice. And it's just you, the SANE, and the advocate, which is not no beeping button to check your blood pressure or whatever those things do all the time. So it's just very one-on-one, and they're just there for you, not 500 other people coming in. If there is extensive injuries, they will have to go to the ED for that. But for the exam, photos, documents, all that can be done in that room. And we have 5 of us on staff for response that respond all the time. And I have another coworker. She mostly does Sullivan County, where I do Washington County and Johnson City. And we do day shift. So if there's a call during the day, one of us will go. And then after hours, we rotate through our domestic violence advocates also. Or Tina, she responds. She's our backup. Because so we have had 2 at once, which is crazy, but it happens. Yep. So we always have backup.
Yeah.
Maybe you could talk to the regularity of how much that's needed.
How much?
Yeah, SANE nurses are needed.
Yeah,
I feel like that's something people don't even think about.
Right. So with the Branch House, they have quite a bit now. Like there's like a bunch that I've had multiple times, and there's a SART coordinator that comes with them every time, and 2 of them are SANE nurses also. And then one is is the director at Branch House, and so one of them always comes with the SANE nurse to do the exam. But they have a lot right now, but I know they're always looking for more, just because it's such a high demand, even in this region, which we don't think about as a lot. Like, a lot of people always ask me, how much is there? And I was like, honestly, it's kind of a lot, unfortunately. Which, like, during red zone, which is like during the beginning of school, there's a lot. I'm pretty sure Halloween will probably be a lot, unfortunately. So big holidays, there tends to be more.
Oh, wow.
The red zone begins on the first day of a college year and lasts through the holidays. There's a spike in sexual assault cases that happen on campus and off campus during activities. I think there are several contributing factors to that, but it is something that needs to be recognized, and I'm sure other campuses do it as well. ETSU makes it known by having an actual red flag display on campus, and those who work in student affairs and in counseling are familiar with giving educational opportunities to alert those. This is what a healthy relationship looks like. Here are what the red flags look like. If you see someone, then say something. It's very highly regarded training, and it's an important training for this time of year.
Do a lot of outreach events too, like at ETSU Northeast State. We had one last week, just educating where we are, if you know someone that's needing help for therapy or anything, domestic violence, it doesn't matter. Different places where you can go to get that help that they may need.
I think sometimes too that you and I might use some acronyms that aren't familiar with others, because I just heard another one too, and it occurs to me that when she talks about a SART team and a SART response.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
No. I mean, I do it too, but that is a sexual assault response team, and that is comprised of legal entities, sane nursing, advocates. It's an important part of this community that actually looks at actual file cases and going, how did this one progress? What changes can we make? That's a recent addition to this community.
We have one in Sullivan County. It's the first Thursday of every month. And then we have one in Washington County, Johnson City. That's the first or the second Friday of every month. We have those. And the DA's office comes to those, which is very important because, like, sometimes they don't want to talk to an officer and they'll ask you, have you talked to them? And I'm like, oh yeah, I talked to her yesterday. And we can, like, easily make that, like, I'll go with you to talk to the officer. So that's really big in our role, is keeping contact and letting them know, like, they're not alone. We'll go with them. I've been to so many law enforcement interviews and like, it's in a police department with the chain on the floor. No one's like, they're probably like, why are you nervous? I'm like, I'm nervous and I didn't do anything wrong, and they didn't do anything wrong. So we're just there for them as an emotional support person, because typically they don't have any. We go to court with them also. In Carter County, you're only allowed one person in there, and during COVID, it was only the victim and an advocate would be the only person. So there'd be so many people, like I see people all the time in Washington County Court especially, that they don't have anyone. They are going through this, they're abused, and they don't have anyone. And I'll just go up and say, hey, do you want me to sit with you during this? Because I can tell you don't have anyone, and their attorney's just there, just talking to them, and they don't know. Not that I know much better, but I know that they're not going to just railroad them like they would if someone else was there. Yeah. So SART's really important. There's also SIPIT, which is the Child Investigation Protective Team, which is the same thing as SART, but for minors. That is the first or the second Friday of every month in Washington County. So I just started going to those two. So I'll be at my first one tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So. And you mentioned like 2014 with the first trained SANE nurse. That's not that long ago. And so
correct.
The response a victim would get if they went to the hospital or police department, they would be by themselves and it's just like trusting the police officer to have some.
They would be by themselves, and there wasn't protocol established. Mm-hmm. When I responded as an advocate, there wasn't a dedicated space, and so they would push the curtain closed, and sometimes we would get a question like, do you use drugs? Mm-hmm. That was always a favorite. And then list the drugs. Do you think we should administer a pregnancy test? Then sometimes they would go out in the hallway and have a brief meeting. There was no protocol, whereas now there is. Mm. Now there is a much more informed and trained response. Before, I think, when I started this, I tell everybody, I really was Gomer Pyle. I really thought that when I went to the police chief's office that day and I asked, why do you have 91 untested rape kits on your shelf? I really thought I was just going to bring this to his attention and things would be rectified. Well, there were no policies in place to do that. Now they have a time frame to have those tested. There are some times where things slip through the cracks. There was a very high profile case last year. We just passed the anniversary a couple of weeks ago. And that victim waited for more than 7 hours to have a rape kit administered. And there wasn't a rape kit on site. They had to send out for one. So sometimes there are gaps, but out of that particular gap, something good came because a dedicated space was the response of Ballot Health. And now there is a much more informed response that hopefully will never again take that many hours to get a rape kit administered. Because she had her baby with her as well. Extra trauma.
Wow.
What's supposed to happen with a rape kit after that 7 hours after it's taken?
The police has to come and pick it up. So typically, like if it was in Washington County, they would come pick it up, or Johnson City. They take it into their, I guess like a holding room. I'm not really sure what it looks like in there. And I believe they take stuff down to Knoxville to TBI once a week, I'm pretty sure. And in those, there can be like a toxicology kit, which has to be cold. for like blood, if they think it was drug facilitated sexual assault, they'll take that. Their clothing will be in there also. Underwear typically, and all the swabs that are collected from the exam, and they'll take it down to TBI in Knoxville, and they'll test it. I would say the last trial I was at, which she was a victim, this happened way before I was working here, so I think it was 2020, and we went to trial last in September, and it came back. And then I've had another one of my victims, hers came back already. So I know they're outsourcing some to Florida to test kids now, which I guess is going a little bit quicker to get back. So
I've just heard that sometimes they don't make it to Knoxville, or they're not a priority. But
yeah, I haven't.
Well, there is a chain of custody as far
they have
as
to sign
what
off.
the process is, and I think they've signed off several times for that. So I'm hoping that isn't true. I've heard that as well, but I'm hoping that isn't true.
I was just asking.
It's crazy.
It is. It can be. It can be. And the chain of custody
Because I don't know where it goes after I leave the hot. Like, I'm walking out with them, and I'm hoping that it's going where it needs to go. But it's normally like a patrol officer comes pick it up. Right. And they sign it. And then I do know, when I just learned this in the trial, like how many times, like whoever's testing it, they have to initial that they're testing it, and they open it. And I didn't know all those extra steps, but I also don't know how it gets there either. So
right.
Yeah, but the chain of custody is so important, because without that, then testimony is compromised. Mm-hmm. So, and it takes so long. I think you just heard her say a rape was committed in 2020 and the trial was in September.
Yeah.
Of 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And it was almost, it happened in February, the assault, and so it was almost a year to the date, or 2 years, 3 years to the date that happened.
It takes a lot to go through all that. Mm-hmm. That's what you're talking about, like re-traumatizing people.
Yes.
You're like, do I really want to think about this for 3 years?
Yeah. Exactly. And sociological data supports the fact that if a trauma victim has an advocate walking with them through the journey, they're much more likely to complete the process. Mm-hmm. And of course, not everyone completes the process. And I think sometimes all of us who work toward justice on any level can become frustrated with that. But I think I learned as an advocate, well, I learned a lot of things as an advocate, but one of the things I learned as an advocate was to sit back and just wait. Today's reaction is not going to be the reaction in 6 months. We all know what trauma does as far as impact on brain and response. So
definitely meeting them where they are.
Definitely.
And like every day is truly different. And like the one we met with the other day, like some days she's great, and then some days it's just like it's a lot, and I get that. And then we have some people, like the one who just went to trial, I could just tell now from September that like I just see her, she looks so much lighter, as in like she's like, it's done. And then we'll go in December and have sentencing, and then she's like, it's really done now. Like I can go on with my life and just keep
that closure is probably important.
I mean, we'll still be in contact with her, of course, but I know that, like, I could already tell when we were finishing that Friday night that she was just like that, just like it came off her, and I just was like, that was so amazing to see.
And I think it's important to note too that we are talking about 2 high-profile cases here, and both of those trials ended in victories for the victims. That's important because that used to not happen that often here. And when for this conference, the high-profile victim has done a video for us. It's our victim impact statement. Mm-hmm. Do you know what she asked for participants in this conference? Empathy and compassion. She felt bombarded. She was kidnapped, broad daylight, afternoon, at an ATM machine with her baby. And when she escaped, she had to go to a total stranger's door and ask for help. Law enforcement descended. I have no interest in bashing law enforcement, so let me be clear about that. Law enforcement descended, and she said several of them came and just started with a barrage of questions. And are you sure? And is that really what you remember? A trauma victim, as we all know, can't make that recall immediately afterwards. So she looked in the camera and she said, I'm asking you to have empathy and compassion and listen. That's what she asked for. That's a tremendously strong statement to make. It's a tremendous ask to make.
Yeah, there was a lot of officers there that night. That was a long night. I responded to that call that day, and I couldn't even talk to her. I was there the whole time, just on the outside, of course, and that was just a lot. And I just felt so helpless because I couldn't. I'm not no nurse, no doctor, just little baby advocate. I do my thing. I was like beginning of like one of my third like by myself out of training, and I just felt so helpless. And I was calling everybody. I called Tina 500 times. She was probably like, "I'm gonna lose my number." But I was like, I don't know what to do, but I have to do something. And I just felt like everything I was doing was nothing, and having to go back and tell her I'm sorry, which she's probably like, I don't want to hear that again. But after that, I walked her through the whole court process, and still today, we still talk a lot.
She's an amazing young woman, an amazing young woman. And I was thinking the other day, sadly, you know, in my head, I walked into this as a grandmother. I have 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters. And my granddaughters were fairly young when I first started, and now they're 17 and 14. And I'm excited about the changes that happen. But sadly, I'm looking at this young woman who's making this video the other day. Blonde hair, blue eyes, all-American face. Her rape happens at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She has her baby. There can't be a heck of a lot of victim blaming here like we normally hear. And she has retained such tremendous composure and strength, and hoping to make a continual difference that she has already begun to make in this community for future victims, because she doesn't want them to have to go through what she went through immediately after her rape.
Even at court, she would be like, because it takes a long time, they're like, we'll reset it, reset. She was still just so like, okay. But she never once was like, I'm done, I don't want to do it anymore. She's kept going until the end, and she did a victim impact statement on the day of court, the last day we had in court. She did.
I believe her husband did as well, right?
Her husband, her mother, and the victim, of course, did one. They all 3 did one.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. It's probably rare to have that much family support in those situations, too.
I think her mom, I know that night was traveling. She's a travel nurse or a travel something, but her dad lived in Florida. He got there first, because I didn't meet her mom that night, but I met her at the first court setting. And her, we got her like, because again, like, what can I do? Nothing I could do at that point was make a difference. But after the court, I did, we got her like some Ring cameras, just maybe make her feel a little bit better at home and stuff. So we got her, and she's in therapy and everything. So
that's important.
Do you find that there are people in this area who are just really unaware of the frequency of domestic violence and think like, oh, that doesn't really happen a lot here in this area?
I think so. I did a presentation at a church this past Saturday morning, and those who are listening pretty much look like me, middle-aged white women who, for the most part, have led a pretty comfortable existence, and on the peripheral, they know that these societal issues exist, but they haven't had firsthand experience with them. And I go back to, this grandmother wanted to make this community in this region a little bit safer for her grandchildren, and I was amazed Saturday morning at the response that I got. I was also amazed at a couple of the stories I heard after my presentation. I used to think I couldn't be surprised at hearing stories, but Saturday morning I was, because I saw those women who look like me, and 2 of them had stories that would fit in this conference. So I think what we've done is collectively in this society, Me Too began the breakdown of allowing power to win all of the time. Now we've created a society that's beginning to have these hard conversations, that's beginning to recognize the importance of having these conversations. We're seeing high-profile cases still following Me Too of men who are being called up or called on or called out for something they did 10 years ago. Good. Does it make you uncomfortable? Good. Because we women have been uncomfortable for a long time. Good. And as far as when I would respond in ER, I was there for one person. If she didn't ask for you to be there, and I understand that there are victims that aren't female, but females do disproportionately represent sexual assault cases. I didn't respond to any cases that weren't female. If she didn't ask for you to be there, you don't get to stay, because this is who we're focused on. So I think it's changing, but it's a process. What else I think needs to change are the stories that have yet to be told in communities of color. The stories that I have gotten and that have left my shoulders wet were, I'm not calling police, I don't trust police. I heard that several times. I don't know that journey. I learned from a friend of mine that we all know what it's like to raise a child of color in this community, how you say after 9 o'clock you don't drive down certain streets. I learned from a friend of mine who has sons, if you're going to be in a public space and it's getting dark, take your hands out of your pocket slowly. I didn't have to do that. I've had to learn a lot of those lessons in recent years, a lot. And as far as sexual assault and domestic violence go, we still have a lot more work to do in those communities of color.
And how many years has the summit been?
I started in 2016.
Okay.
And it went through 2019. And then I went home. My husband was ill and died shortly after. And so I've come back just this year. And we began, and I was astounded at the response from these professionals. They never hesitated one time to go, absolutely. In fact, the assistant district attorney in Sullivan County actually got a trial rearranged date-wise so that she could be a presenter. They want these stories out. They want this training out. They want not to have to wait for what used to be considered a credible witness. Because I had a police detective tell me several times years ago, if she can't remember, I don't have a case. And my response was, if she can't remember, that's the start of your case.
Right.
That's the difference we should be having in our conversations.
Maybe you can both talk a little bit about what is the demographic of sexual assault look like in Washington County and the surrounding areas.
So last year on our data that we collected for the fiscal year, I had about 20 men, I would say, and about 80 women, 16 children, and only 3 of the women were African American. And so that's pretty, but I mean, or a lot of people just don't want to report also, how Ruth was saying, just because they don't trust the police. And so I hope that more people with more awareness will start to report these types of crimes. And our shelter is a little better. We have a lot of diversity there, and we have way more all diverse, all cultures and everything there. So, but not a lot in sexual assault at all.
So can you go to the shelter without dealing with the police?
So after hours till 9 o'clock is when our staff is not going to transport in the van, so police can escort. But yeah, I've had a mom with sexual assault on her children And they came to the shelter because it was the father, and it was late at night, so she had a vehicle, so she just followed me there, and I got him set up in the room there. But they don't have to involve police at all, even in the sexual. They can do what's called a hold kit, and it literally just says numbers. Doesn't say a name, first name, nothing, color, hair, anything. Just a number that they can use. And they have up to, is it 10 and a half now? 10 and a half years to come back and report that. So they can weigh in if they're like, yeah, I think I'm ready at year 8. Okay, we'll go ahead and do that. But they don't have to report at the beginning.
Okay.
I'm excited for this summit. I hadn't heard about it, and like you said, the lineup here is amazing. I'm glad to see there are a lot of women on the summit. I've seen before where these kind of conversations happen.
And that wasn't even intentional. So to know, okay, here are the job titles that I wanted to present, because clearly we've all seen the headlines here for the Johnson City Police Department and the investigation. Clearly there has been a lack of understanding and compassion for victims. And so my first thought was to gear this toward law enforcement. And look, women represent a huge part of this. We have one male presenter, and as I said, I was writing down job titles, so I didn't say, oh, let's have a women's summit. Let's have women educate. It just worked out that way, and I'm extremely proud of that. Extremely proud. Those assistant district attorneys, those 2 women by themselves are going to change the world. Abby Wallace is here in Washington County, and she came from Memphis. And if you'll recall, Memphis sort of set the bar for testing rape kits. They began with 11,000 untested rape kits. Wow. And so that she came to us with, we're going to change this area for the response. But they're all impressive.
What would you say the difference between domestic violence and sexual assault is? I know they're probably really closely tied.
I was going to say there aren't a lot of domestic violence cases that don't involve sexual assault.
Because
correct?
I had one, and yes, you're correct. And I went to the hospital. This is before we had the room or anything, and like on her paper, because they give tags with like their name and stuff, and that's what they label on the kit, or on the little swabs, the little packaging, and it said domestic violence. And I went in there, and I mean, she was bruised head to toe, of course, but I was like, why would they call me on this? And I had no idea she had been sexually assaulted until I heard her story from that. And so they intertwine a lot, like with strangulation a lot is a big one, which considers DV also. We have a lot of strangulation with sexual assault because they intertwine quite a bit.
Intimate partner violence has become so prevalent here in Tennessee. We've consistently ranked in the top 10 for having the most cases in this country. Last time I looked, we were number 6 in the country.
In the country?
In the country. Wow. In the country. I know. It'd be nice to be known for something else, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Number 6 for intimate partner violence. You can't separate the two.
Yeah.
In the heat of moments, sometimes in fights, it's easy to want to categorize or to separate, but quite often you can't.
Yeah.
What are some other states on that list? I'm wondering if it's more rural areas, and that leads towards not...
But considering the fact, when I looked at it before, we're not one of the most heavily populated states in the country.
Right.
I found that to be, extremely disconcerting.
Right.
But I think what happens, or what has happened traditionally here, is what we talked about before, the conversations. Faith communities are slowly having these conversations about what a healthy relationship looks like. Other entities are being... Yes, the Unitarian Universalist Church does a tremendous job, and they asked Tina and I both a few years ago to incorporate domestic violence into their policy and the response in church membership. That's noteworthy and remarkable. I wish a lot more churches would do that, because I think we cannot be dismissive. about the influence that churches have in this region. They still have a pretty heavy influence. And again, I can go back to communities of color. When I have sit in story circles, I have said, where's your pastor? Where's your minister? Justice on a lot of levels began in church basements. Whether it was civil rights, whether it was women's rights, which should be incorporated as the same, they began in church basements. But I think somewhere along this societal journey, we've lost focus with what our focus should be when we talk about being a Christian or being a Muslim or being whatever faith community you belong to. It should be about justice and compassion. It should be about recognizing that everyone you sit with is created in the image of a higher being. All of us, no matter what. And I think those conversations are changing. Not as fast as I would like, this grandmother would like them to, but they're changing nonetheless.
And that made me think of the numbers for same-sex domestic violence is probably even lower.
It is lower. I have a friend who was victimized in a same-sex relationship that was never reported, and it took months for those bruises to go away. And sometimes I think Amani would probably agree that abusers become more knowledgeable in how to hide
Absolutely.
those marks.
Absolutely.
How to hide those marks.
If I punch you in the stomach, no one's going to see it all the time. Yeah, absolutely.
And the level of violence grows when she announces that she's pregnant.
Wow.
There's data to support that as well. Do you know how many times it takes a domestic violence victim to leave for good? On average, 7 times.
You know, I was going to guess that because I've heard the same number with when folks who are addicted to like opioids and things like that with recovery and trying to go through recovery. It's about the same. It's 6 or 7 times before they've gotten treatment and moving. That's something that's interesting. That is,
Isn't it though?
yeah.
And there's a variety of reasons. Dependency on whatever you have used to mask pain is a contributing factor. You know what else is a large contributing factor? Pets. I'll kill your pet.
I have a lot
Children.
of people who call hotline for the shelter and they won't leave because of their pets. Even though we have it's an organization called Red Rover. It's based out of California. They can board them the duration that they're in the shelter, but it's just not going to happen in 30 seconds for them to leave, type of thing, and they won't leave because of that.
That's funny. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I've been hearing about that recently. I don't remember what the organization is called, but one of the like pet food companies is now helping raise money for helping shelters for domestic and sexual assault to make it easier to leave with your pet.
Because that's a big factor. And we have a lot of, which we're thankful for Red Rover because they'll pay for the boarding as long as they're in the shelter.
That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know about that company too. I'll have to go look that
I'm gonna
up.
have to.
That's really a huge advancement.
And I had never thought about it before, just to be really honest. And I was like, well, yeah. That's your baby.
Yes, yes, and it happens frequently.
Yeah.
Frequently.
Well, and I can imagine if you're, you want to leave, but you don't want to leave your pet there because that's vulnerable pet.
Absolutely.
Years ago, there was a case here in East Tennessee where the abuser actually killed her dog by putting him in the dryer cycle.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And on the order protection, there's a box that says "Have threatened to harm me or my pets too."
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what does it look like, just to give knowledge to people, something has happened to you, what are your steps? What should you do if you want to report it? Or maybe if you don't want to report it, you've been sexually assaulted or you have domestic violence, what are your steps?
For sexual assault, if they want to get the evidence collection and then they can hold it, which we stress that a lot. You can change that at any point in the exam throughout, because I would say it probably takes like 45 minutes depending on injuries and
So do you go to the hospital?
to get the evidence collection.
Yeah.
And then they can do a hold kit to just have the evidence for when, and if they don't, they'll destroy it after the mark. I believe they have to follow up in like 9.5 years to see if they would want to go through with it or not.
I guess what I'm asking is for very basic elementary instructions for like, okay, something happened to me. What do I literally do? Like, people just don't know, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean,
The Family Justice Center provides resources. It's
so just,
downtown.
you
on
could call
Montgomery
them
on
and be like,
Montgomery
what
Street.
do I do?
Or even if you don't, you can call the Family Justice Center number, and our hotline, you hit 2, and somebody will always answer it, and they can give you just advice on what to do in that situation.
Okay.
And just talk you through. Because a lot of times people, they just want to talk and hear somebody listen.
Yeah.
And I've done that multiple times, middle of the night too. They just want someone to listen to what's happening.
Right.
But so much progress, I think, has been made both with Ballad Health and with the response that we now have with Frontier Health, and with the placement of resources in the community through legal aid and through the Family Justice Center. The communication has improved so much that if you request an advocate to come with you, that person more than likely is going to have that number with them to call, where that used to not be the case. I told you, I walked into this like Gomer Pyle, and I thought immediate response and everybody gets taken care of, and that isn't what was happening.
We always, if I have someone and I'm on vacation, we'll always have someone, a backup to go with whoever to whatever they need, court or whatever the circumstance may be. They won't have to go alone.
Branch house.
Yeah, how many Amanis are there?
There are in Washington County. There's me, 2 others, and then Tina, and then Kristen. She works in Sullivan County, but she's also can be backup for Washington County too.
Okay.
Typically, if like I have a client that happened in Sullivan County and like you just bond with them, you're in the hospital room with them for 4 hours. They know my whole life story. We're talking. I'm listening to you. You're listening to me. We're talking about whatever, and they'll just bond with you, and they don't be like, I don't want to talk to anyone else, and I'll just be like, okay, I'll be the one to go to court with you. I'm not just gonna be like, all right, peace out, gotta go.
Right.
Have other people in my county I have to tend to. So we do a lot of that. So there's 4 of us. 4, and then Tina, so 5.
Branch House has sane response 24/7. I mean, there's always going to be a sane trained nurse, and that's just incredibly moving for me to even be able to say on site. Your rape kit is administered on site. They don't
Clothing,
bring you
shower,
back here.
Everything.
Yes, clothing, a change of clothes for you. That's so important, because I don't think people knew until recent years or recognized the fact that when a SANE kit is administered, you lose your clothes. You are the evidence. You are the evidence. And so we have responses now where that's included in the response as a change.
We used to have to carry like 5 of every size clothing on our week of on call, and now we can they're already being held at each clinic or each SANE room. So that's helped a lot, just because, I don't know, I need my trunk. I junk it up anyways, and that's how it is. So it's nice to be able to be like, okay, size large, here you go, and give them a bag and resources in, and they follow up. I typically wait the next day, or not the next day, but the day after, to follow up with them. They're pretty receptive with that.
That reminds me of something else, that Cranberries is a year-round drop-off space for a safe house. Children's books. While they wait in a waiting room, whether it's in the hospital or at
after
safe
hours,
house.
the child life specialists, they're not really there. So we have a lot of toys that we can go and get in the room too, but a lot of like coloring books and stuff are always great.
Yes, books and coloring books. I'm glad I remembered that, because I made a mental note to say, if you want to, a lot of times children are with victims at the hospital or at safe house. So storybooks, coloring books, crayons, and coloring pencils, those are important, and you can always either call Frontier Health or drop off at Cranberries year round.
That was going to be my next question is what can other people do to help?
So we had what would you call it, a fundraiser?
Sure.
I guess a fundraiser a few weeks ago, and it was for the victim, and she was like, I want, good Lord, that thing is near me. She wanted, like, she thought of things that would be better in a room during the exam, and she was like, weighted blankets, journals, leggings, robes, instead of like a hospital gown. Right. So we collected all that. We had it at Cranberries, and a lot of people donated a bunch of that stuff to us for the rooms that we have. Chargers, which is a big thing that I always thought of. I'm like, everybody wants a charger, and I'm always just giving mine. I'm like, okay, you can have mine. I'll show it out. It's fine. So I'm always like, so we got a bunch of chargers, robes, a lot men's clothing, like basketball shorts and stuff, sweatpants. We've taken a lot of too. So, and we have a little box with kiddo stuff too now.
Yes, but I hadn't thought of that before, until Tina had mentioned, oh, look, she sent me a picture of child's feet with books laying all around so that they could, be occupied and not worried. Not worried.
And we have little kid bags that we take. I always keep two, a boy and a girl kid bag when I'm on call, just because I never know if it's in the day or the night. So it has like Play-Doh and slime and coloring books and Barbie dolls, just random fidgets, stuff like that we keep for the kiddos at least.
So a lot of people don't think about that
right.
The children are with victims and survivors.
We don't have a lot of time left, but I was going to say this is all incredibly important, and I'm glad we're talking about it, but I also wanted to get to know you both a little bit more. So maybe tell us what you do for fun.
Oh. You can start that. I got to think about that. I'm a student.
I like to watch a lot of trash TV, like reality TV. That's like a part of my self-care. Like I was talking to my mom the other day, I was like, I just want to watch TV. I just want to watch my shows, catch up on them. So I do that, and I go to a lot of the Tennessee games. My sister works for recruitment, so we get tickets for that. And my family still lives in Knoxville, so I go there. I babysit a lot, which I love. I nannied for the nurse practitioner at Turning Point. That's how I got she was like, you should apply for this job. I love Tina. And I was like, okay, because everybody was like, I've got a job, and I was like, I don't have nothing, about to graduate in December. And she was like, just apply. I was like, okay, because I had no leads or anything. I was just like, I'm worried about graduation, and so I got that job, and that's how I began nannying through her, and so I hang out with him all the time. I do that for fun.
So you say you still babysit? Or not so much anymore?
Well, just random, date nights or something. Like if they're going to a concert or something and I'm free, I'll do it. So
I'll get your number.
Yeah, absolutely. I love children.
So I got my first pet a few years ago, okay? I inherited this dog from my husband, and he was a tremendous therapy dog for my husband. I don't know if you know this or not, because first pet ever, not even fish, okay? But if someone has tremors and they pet their therapy dog, the tremors stop. I didn't know that before this. So, my dog's name is Bruce. Bruce did holy work with my husband, and so for about a year and a half, Bruce and I just kind of circled each other, couldn't figure out what to do with each other. And then it was me and Bruce. And I had to figure this out. So how I figured this out is what I call a therapy ride. If I go collect a story, I hear a story from somebody, or I'm working on my dissertation, then I put Bruce in the front seat, and I talk the whole time. And I play my playlist, and Bruce doesn't care what I play on my playlist. My grandchildren do. And they don't have the same taste as me because, after one Taylor Swift song, I can be okay with not hearing any more of those. Not that I'm anti her, just one is enough. Right. And so I play my music and I talk to Bruce, and Bruce doesn't tell anybody what those stories are. And it's amazing how much help he is with this dissertation. He just looks at me like, and I'm like, if you cock your head left, I'm gonna make a left turn, right? And we just drive until we run out of sunrise, sunset, depending on what time of day. That's my therapy.
If you get the honor of being friends with Ruth on Facebook, you get to see all the little adventures of Bruce
It's
and Ruth.
been an adventure, hasn't it? I forgot you were my friend
Yes.
on Facebook, and I would just be like, Bruce, dude, what are you doing? Like, he would lay in the floor on his back, and he would put his hands like this, and we would all trip going
Oh
on
my goodness.
in the room. I'd be like, what do you need, a prayer closet? What is this? What is this? But I've learned a lot, and Bruce has probably learned a lot too.
What kind of dog is he?
He is half Chihuahua, half Corgi.
Oh my goodness.
He's cute.
Okay.
He is very cute, but he's also the perfect personality for me because I'm like this all of the time, and Bruce is just like whatever. I took him on campus with me yesterday. He was a huge hit.
Aw.
A huge hit.
Okay.
I was gonna ask, are there any therapy dogs with Frontier Health?
We don't have one. They have a cat at Branch House though.
Yeah.
And Kristen's trying to get her Sam. She had a little golden retriever. Trying to get him to be a little therapy dog. So.
I just think that'd be good, especially for like the kids,
Yeah.
or you're sitting there
wonder-
telling a terrible story. You have a little
Mhm.
friend.
That
I
would
don't
be
know.
cool.
Yeah, Bruce is good at that. I'll loan him to you, but you have to give him back. Yeah. He's
Will.
really good at that. He has actually been a practitioner before.
yeah.
That's so cute.
They're important. They can really help people.
I totally forgot Sky knew those stories.
And did y'all have any questions for each other? Anything?
Everything.
I don't have any questions, just a huge, great big thank you for all that Amani does. She does tremendous work,
Thank you.
and it's hard. It's what she does is hard.
Thank you.
And so my job is usually just to go, yay! What can I do? Whose butt can I kick so that you can get
Thank
your
you
work
for
done?
letting us use cranberries tonight and put me on the summit. And I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, it's fine.
But she does amazing things, and so do all of her colleagues.
Thank you.
Well, y'all are like heroes of the community. Like I'm totally impressed. Like it's
you.
hard work and it's important work. So
Thank you.
And we love having you at ETSU too. My kids got to hang out with her this summer
Yay.
for the Renaissance
Yeah, it was
summer
fun.
camp.
It was
a lot of
fun. I love to do that. I love programs. And I used to be an after school director, so
Okay.
I just like sitting down in the middle and going, so how was your day today?
and I'm sure your kids had a lot to say.
Yeah.
They do.
Well, one of them is like my youngest granddaughter would be really appreciative if the day didn't start until about noon.
Yeah.
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 Is that Ethan?
Ethan. Yeah. He's probably not awake yet.
Fall break, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you for letting us
Appreciate it.
highlight.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and definitely.
Yeah, this should come out before.
Yes,
the
I'm gonna
summit,
have it out
so-
next Friday.
Okay, so definitely check out the summit October 27th at the Brinkley Center, and that's formerly the Millennium Center. So the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Summit. I'm going to try to make it.
Yeah,
Yay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.